Hey everyone, CJ here. If you haven't heard, for the last couple of days, the tabletop RPG world has been abuzz with Paizo's announcement that they are creating the second edition of Pathfinders. For those who doesn't know what Pathfinder is, let me just give you a quick history lesson. Pathfinder is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game that was developed out of 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons open game license. Because it was released after D&D 3.5, people often jokingly call it Edition 3.75. The system is near identical, but has many tweaks like rebalanced combat maneuvers, new feats, and so on. Pathfinder went on to become enormously popular. But in my opinion, they can equally attribute their success to their excellent product and also to, quote-unquote, the failure of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Not many people like 4th edition and its new system, even though you may still find 2 loyal fans still defending it now. Back then, many players who were unhappy with Edition 4 stuck with Edition 3 or 3.5. But since D&D had moved on, there were nothing new for them. And that's when Paizo came in to fill the gap in the market with Pathfinders. And Paizo made a killing as 4th edition floundered. Fast forward to the present day, Dungeons & Dragons made an enormous comeback with the release of the much simplified 5th edition. It has become phenomenally successful, and as 5th edition rockets into the stratosphere, troubling news bubbles in the Pathfinder camp. Some Pathfinders players are switching to D&D, including high-profile personalities and brands such as Penny Arcade, YouTuber Dawnforge Cast, and Critical Role. Yeah, Critical Role started out playing with Pathfinder rules when it was in its home game stage. They switched to 5th edition rule when it was turned into a show. Just take this as an anecdotal account, but I also heard firsthand from Pathfinder Society members that the rules for Pathfinder are just getting too bloated and it's hard for them, especially the game masters, to keep up. Pathfinder's strength over D&D, which was its extensive combat and customization options, became a liability. Even too much of a good thing can be bad for you. Let's make a quick comparison of the current state of the games. In general, Pathfinder has crunchier, more complex rules for everything. If you want to do something, there is almost always a rule for it. Those who likes it may say that it is more fair that way because it relies less on the game master's discretion. But others may say that it is cumbersome and may lead to more rules lawyering. Pathfinders have more skills for different tasks. For example, they have separate swim and climb skill instead of just athletics like in D&D. D&D allows for moderate amount of customization. Pathfinder allows for extensive customization. Pathfinders have more floating modifiers, +5 from this, +2 from that, -3 from something else, and it just keeps going. Dungeons & Dragons is more simplified. There is also less power gap between levels in D&D. Level 5 characters do not feel too out of place among level 8 characters, but Pathfinder has greater power gap. The setting is also a point of differentiation. Pathfinder's game world, Golarion, is more colorful. It has steampunk city-states, high magic states, and so on. 5th edition is currently set in strictly medieval Forgotten Realms. There are many realms in the D&D multiverse, but not much have been published officially for 5th edition. There are Magic the Gathering campaign settings that they have released as unofficial supplement, but you have to come up with your own adventure for that. With all this laid out, to say whichever game is better really depends on your subjective taste, but if you think that 5th edition is hard to learn, Pathfinder is going to be out of reach for many of you. But with the 2nd edition of Pathfinder, Paizo is making a massive overhaul to generally simplify the system. They want to make the game easier to play. They want to streamline some stuff, simplify others, but stay true to Pathfinders and add more new contents. That's why I believe that they are aiming for somewhere in between the first Pathfinder and 5th edition in terms of complexity. If you want to measure success on the size of the player base, I don't think Pathfinder can overtake D&D anytime soon. I have no doubt that some Pathfinder players will return home to the brand, and some D&D 5e players may move across because they prefer a crunchier system. But I strongly believe that D&D will continue to attract new players at an astounding rate, especially those who have never played any tabletop RPGs before. D&D has been the first point of contact for people getting into tabletop role-playing game, and it will continue to be so, because it is currently one of the simpler systems out there. and it has humongous brand recognition to boot. I think Pathfinders will continue to have life in its own niche. I also think that Paizo is heading towards the right direction. Their emphasis to try to tell a story rather than having a more granular combat system is definitely the way to go. In terms of combat, a tabletop RPG can't really compete with video games, especially against visceral AAA games out there like Zelda or Monster Hunter. While it seems like video games and tabletop RPGs are two completely different things, they are both hobbies that compete for our free time. Many tabletop RPG players play video games, but the opposite may not be true. So, tabletop RPGs have to be able to offer something that video games cannot, and that is dynamic storytelling. Look, I love video games too. I have spent almost 200 hours in Monster Hunter World now. But as much as I love the combat system and the monster design, all I do at this point of the endgame is to just keep killing the same tempered elder dragons for the dozenth time. There is not much narrative here besides the dawning meta-realization that I have become so overpowered, I'm starting to think that I have become the monster. I am not taking any sides, I just want the best product to win. When there is market competition, consumers like us win. One thing I want Paizo to keep in mind though is to also look at the ease of running the game. It is great that they are giving us a lot of player options, but think about the game masters who run it. I have run many different systems out there: D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Doctor Who, Ryutama and more. The reason I keep coming back to D&D is because it is just incredibly easy to run. I often have to spend twice the prep time to run other games at the play level I'm satisfied with. Paizo need to be able to convince the game masters that Pathfinder is going to bring something unique to the table. Without game masters, there are no games. All the game masters I know, including myself, like to tell stories and want to create dramas that deeply affects our players. Combat mechanics rarely does that. I think Paizo, if you're watching this, really need to think about what the game masters want out of a campaign. Let's address the question, how does the Pathfinder system makes it more fun to run for game masters too? Well, that's my take on the current state of these games. What do you guys think? Do you think that Pathfinder is going to crush D&D and send it home crying? Comment below and tell me what you think. CJ, over and out.